Hello there. I wanted to do a short video with regard to part 2 of the private eye report by MD, which is written by Dr. Phil Hammond in Private Eye. He's done 2 parts. This is the second part, and there was a part in this part that made me pause really in terms of what it just raised some questions for me, and I just wanted to focus on this one section of it. I'll put a link below to this article. I know they want people to buy the magazine, but I think it's already had its editions, but it's available via this link as well. And I'll just say thank you to R for the link. I won't say any more than that because but thank you to R, as in the letter R. And there's a section here which begins, listen to nurses and residents. The Lucy Letby jury and initially MD, that's Phil Hammond, were undoubtedly swayed by the power of 7 consultants with 100 years of experience who work with Lucy Letby and are convinced she is guilty. Yeah, a question I'd ask there is it all 7, and do they remain convinced? And were all 7 always convinced, or were all 7 ever convinced? We know about this so-called gang of 4. That's just a question I'm asking here about. I don't know what knowledge this MD has here, Phil Hammond, that all 7 are convinced that Lucy Letby is guilty. But equally important is to listen to the nurses and resident doctors, formerly junior doctors, who worked even more closely alongside her. MD has corresponded at length with one of the consultants. He doesn't say which one it is, but I think I've got an idea who it might be. But he's corresponded at length with one of the consultant, but has been unable to get a single nurse or resident doctor to speak up. Well, that's back to that fear, the grip of fear, isn't it, from the NHS stroke GMC, stroke criminal justice system as a whole. They're frightened, but particularly the NHS put the frighteners on them. And that was revealed in another article in which nurses wanted to testify as a character witnesses for Lucy Letby, and they were told by their managers that you shouldn't do it, it will affect your career, which I think is actually interfering with justice very directly. I think it could be seen as perverting the course of justice potentially, but they'll probably find some sneaky way to get out of that. I'm not talking about the nurses, I'm talking about the people who told the nurses not to testify on behalf of Lucy Letby in terms of her good character. Talking about them. So, who sort of effectively put the frighteners on these nurses, X number of nurses that wanted to speak up for Lucy Letby, but were warned off, shall we say. And so it's just a continuation of this here in this Private Eye article. I'll go on reading. The Telegraph has reported that nurses and resident doctors, oh yeah, he just mentions it here. Sorry about repeating it, but nurses and resident doctors who tried to speak up on behalf of Lucy Letby, were told that they should not give evidence, as to do so might harm their career. This is the bit that I'm really interested in that's coming up now. The Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health, RCPCH, had more luck when it conducted a review of the unit before the murder charges. So just a reminder of that, they actually came in over a period of 2 days in September 2016. So that's, as it says later in this article, 10 weeks after Lucy Letby had been removed from the neonatal unit and put onto admin duties. And they reported the following year that I think they actually published their review and their findings in the early part of 2017. It might have been February, I think, but it was dated. The report was dated in December 2016, but it was held up for some reason, and it was eventually available, as a report back to the hospital, and then It was on their website for some time, and then it was taken off, but people grabbed it, and that's why people have been able to have a look at this RCPCH report, which should have really been one of the mainstays of the defence's case, one of them, one aspect of the defence, but it wasn't used in that way. And then there was this redacted part, which was one of the main parts, which was showing Lucy Letby in a very good light and how well she was thought of. So that kind of disappeared from public view as well. Anyway, it says this RCPCH had more luck when it conducted a review of the unit before the murder charges. Some of this information was removed from the final report for reasons that will hopefully come out at the public inquiry under Lady Justice Thirlwall, which I think is due in September as well. A lot of things happening in September. Yeah, so they've got to make that explicit about why they redacted that section, which really focused on Lucy Letby. Now, this is the next bit. This next paragraph here from the Private Eye article starts in quotes. Why does it start in quotes? Oh, yeah. Okay. So the quotes is this: the neonatal lead, which I believe is Breary, is Breary, Stephen Breary, Dr. Stephen Breary, in an effort to be thorough and explore all the possibilities. Maybe I've read this wrong. I'll continue anyway. So this is apparently the RCPCH's draft report is saying that the neonatal lead, which is Breary, which is really the person that's kicked all this bullying campaign off, really, in an effort to be thorough and explore all the possibilities, said the RCPCH's draft report, continuation of quote, had identified that one nurse had been rostered on shift for all the deaths, although the nurse had not always been assigned to care for that specific infant. Yeah, it wasn't quite what I thought it was, but I can't see the end of the quote here. No, it continues on. I'll read it all through and then I'll sort of do this analysis bit. Well, my version of an analysis of it, to whatever degree. So just to repeat that bit. So saying that the neonatal lead, Stephen Breary, had identified that one nurse had been rostered on shift for all the deaths. That's a crucial 3 words, all the deaths, although the nurse had not always been assigned to care for that specific infant. Subsequently, the paediatric lead, so that's Jayaram, Ravi Jayaram. The paediatric, so that's the order it's going, and this is what we've often thought, the people who've been following this. It starts with Breary and then the next person on board, and they become really the spearhead of it, really is, so it's Breary, then Jayaram. So the paediatric lead, Jayaram, and all the consultant paediatricians had become convinced by the link. Really? Well, who's saying that? That's apparently the RCPCH's report. So presumably they've interviewed every one of them and they've all fallen into line, or they're all saying exactly the same thing. Is that what this is purporting to be said here? Anyway, although this was a subjective view, so this is the RCPCH report still speaking, with no other evidence or reports or clinical concerns about the nurse beyond this simple correlation, an allegation was made to the Director of Nursing, i.e. no evidence, never hasn't been, wasn't any then, hasn't been any evidence throughout the last 8 years, isn't any evidence now. Didn't stop them though, did it? Continuation of the quote from the RCPCH report. On arriving for the visit, so this is September 2016, the RCPCH review team was told the nurse had been moved to an alternative position around 10 weeks previously. That's Lucy being taken away from nursing duties in July, the beginning of July 2016, and put on admin duties without explanation nor any formal investigative process having been established. And there never would have been one. There never would have been one. They would have been happy just to leave her there until she resigned, and you never would have heard about this case. I've made that point lots of times, as have other people. They weren't doing anything, and they never were. It's only, I've got to keep repeating this, so important. It's only because of the grievance process and the fact Lucy Letby was vindicated in the grievance process, completely vindicated, to the point that all those consultants, well, the 4 of them, this is why I'm a bit concerned about this broad brushstroke about all of them, i.e. 7 of them. Is that true? If that is true, why is the grievance process only in respect to 4 of them? And 4 of them, so we're talking about Breary, Jayaram, Gibbs, and this mysterious Dr. B. Well, it's a female doctor. It's not mysterious, just that she, for some reason, got anonymity, same as Dr. A did. I don't know whether it really was 7 of them. That might be kind of lost there. And it's a bit odd, really, that if one of those 7 is Alison Timmis, for example, where does that leave her very explicit email sent to Tony Chambers, the CEO, the chief executive, back in late sort of winter, sort of late 2015, December 2015, saying that it's chaos here and that's the reason why children are going to, it's dangerous here, it's not safe, babies are going to die, staff are going to have breakdowns because we're just overloaded, nobody's listening. Where would that leave her if she's meant to be one of these 7? But this kind of like holistic view that they're all on the same page, is that true? I don't know. I've not seen that explicitly anywhere, other than these sort of broad claims here, which are a bit kind of like a broad wash, really. Where was I? So, on arriving, so there's been no investigative process established at all. They just moved Lucy Letby, a form of constructive dismissal from her nursing duties as a result of bullying, which she then challenges, and then she is vindicated. She's vindicated and told that they'll even pay for her for a higher course, like an MSc in nursing, and to do even a higher level of training at a level 3 unit. That's how much they realise that she's been targeted, scapegoated, and bullied by the main 4 consultants that I mentioned. But it's only then that they decide about a police investigation, because she's coming back and they've been shamed and they've got this narcissistic rage and they're going to go for her. They would have done nothing otherwise. They just sort of let it ride. That's how much they cared about. And that's how much they actually believed and cared that there was a quote-unquote murderer on the ward. They didn't. They just wanted her out. But they just took it the next step. What's the next thing we can do then? This is how sick it is. So it starts talking about Lucy Letby here, where it says the review team was told that the individual was enthusiastic, capable, and a committed nurse, was an enthusiastic, capable, and committed nurse who had worked on the unit for 4 years. She herself explained to the team that she was passionate about her career and keen to progress. She regularly volunteered to work extra shifts when available, or change her shifts when asked to do so, and was happy to work with her friends on the unit. The directors understood there was nothing about her background, so this must be directors of the RCPCH. There was nothing about her background that was suspicious. Her nursing colleagues, well, I assume that's who the directors are. I don't know why they started talking about directors. Her nursing colleagues on the unit were reported to think highly of her, and she responded to emergencies and other difficult situations, especially when the transport team were involved. There are apparently no issues of competency or training. She was very professional, asked relevant questions, demonstrating an enthusiasm to learn, along with a high level of professionalism. So that's what the RCPCH found in their September investigations, all those positive things about Lucy. So Lucy's been removed from nursing duties for no reason whatsoever, with no evidence whatsoever. And there's been no evidence to this day with regard to any criminal activity, and no evidence with regard to incompetency. So, and the fact that she was going to be coming back was a complete vindication of her with regard to competency. So they had to move the goalposts and then say, well, that's a crime then. If we can't get her out through incompetency, then it's a crime. Because if they really believed it was a crime, they had a duty to go to the police over a year before, and they didn't do any of that. And they had a duty to go to the child death overview panel. They didn't do any of that. They had a duty to question the post-mortems. Didn't do any of that. Didn't do any of those things. The statutory duties they had, legal duties to do that. Didn't do any of them. If Lucy Letby had stayed on what Jairam mockingly called the island of lost souls, got fed up there, would have left, gone to another trust, you wouldn't have never heard about this case. Because what it is at that point was before they went nuclear on it, these group of 4 bullying bastards, what it was a workplace bullying scenario in which they wanted to scapegoat a person because things were falling apart there, because the whole unit wasn't fit to act as a level 2 unit at all. And the doctors, those consultants were failing, so they're looking for somebody to blame. And that would have kind of exorcised, at least for a time, their rage and their narcissistic rage about being called to account and being part of a failing unit. And they wouldn't think it was anything to do with them. Oh no, it's got to be someone else's fault. Just the last little section I'll read here then. Consultant whistleblower here. In September 2023, MD, that's Dr. Phil Hammond, had a lengthy email exchange with one of the frontline consultants following detailed doubts about the interpretation of the evidence voiced by another consultant who had written to the I. So which one was that other consultant? What's that mean then? MD's got a lengthy email exchange. Because he's not naming anyone, it's just hard to kind of parse this, to work out who he means. With one of the frontline consultants following detailed doubts about the interpretation of the evidence. So this is someone who's not one of the people then, another consultant. Is that Alison Timmis? It sounds like it could be. Who's not going with the gang of 4, really, not going with Jairam and Breary, Gibbs and Dr. B. That's who it could be. I don't know. It's so vague, this, because it's not stipulating who they mean. So detailed doubts about the interpretation of the evidence voiced by another consultant who had written to the I, but who was that? I have no doubt his belief that Letby is guilty is genuine. Which person are they referring to? Which consultant? I don't know. It's unclear writing, unfortunately. It's a really good article, but a bit unclear here as to who they're referring to, about which one, because he's setting up 2 different consultants there, isn't he? He's saying he's having a lengthy email exchange with one of the frontline consultants who's got doubts about the interpretation of the evidence voiced by another consultant. So there's a disparity of view in terms of the evidence here. But then he says, I have no doubt his belief that Letby is guilty is genuine. So it's one of those, the one that thinks Lucy Letby is guilty, which I'm assuming is Breary, because I think he's the main one that he's been in touch with is Breary. That's what I think. But there is another one, rather than the full 7, unless there's 8 there, and this is an 8th one that doesn't believe Lucy Letby is guilty. But I think it could well be Alison Timmis, could be. So this kind of idea that they're all on the same page, there's 7, I'm not sure that is as watertight as it's being made out here. I'm trying to read between the lines here about who they mean and what they're meaning here in this article. There's a bit cloak and dagger stuff about, he's not saying who he's speaking to. I'm not saying he should, but I'm just trying to understand what he's saying and why he's saying it. MD, I'm talking about. I have no doubt his belief that Letby is guilty is genuine. Well, I wouldn't be sure. I wouldn't be sure about that, personally. I think they've got on this train of bullying and trying to get somebody out. And once they're on it, and once the police get involved, they don't want to get off it. And they say, well, okay, we can't say anything now after everything we've done. After we've scapegoated someone, are we really going to roll back on our scapegoating? £15 million, £20 million, public money, and all these investigations. They get this hired gun fraudster Evans to back them all up, and then they say, actually, I don't quite believe it after all. Are they really going to do that? They're not. They'll stick with it, whatever they end up believing. I personally have a suspicion, and it's just a suspicion, that at least one or two of those Gang of Four consultants, I've got very serious doubts about what they've been involved in. And I think my prime candidate for that would be Gibbs, who looked very haunted in some of those four photographs, and actually made some kind of noises en route to say, well, this spike could be a sort of coincidental thing. We shouldn't really jump to conclusions. The spearhead of it is Breary and Jayaram. They become this duo. Really, they're the tip of the spear that just forces it through into a police investigation. What it was before was a campaign of bullying and intimidation, and to drive somebody out of their profession as a nurse. That's what they did. The narcissistic articles. But I was not convinced that his explanations were beyond reasonable doubt. So I think he's talking about Breary there. And I think MD is saying, I'm not sure that his explanations are beyond reasonable doubt, because they're obviously not. And his explanations, what are they based on? Are they based on what Evans found? Or are they based on what they told Evans to find? Or are they based on an amalgam of what they found in collusion with the police and Evans? That's what I think's happened. They've all got onto the same page, like they all did for the trial about the rash. The collusion was there to all get onto the same page about to make sure, to confer, not to give natural evidence from memory, but to make sure you're going to have a very solid front and all say the same things. But they were tripped. They didn't work for them completely, and it was challenged to some extent by Myers. That. So MD's saying, I'm not convinced that his explanations were beyond reasonable doubt. It's an odd thing, because he's inserting a legal term there, beyond reasonable doubt, in respect of what he's sort of outside of a forensic situation, outside of a court or anything. He's talking about an interaction, presumably a friendly sort of interaction over email or letter with a consultant. He's saying it's about beyond reasonable doubt. Anyway, by the by, I planned to ask for an independent opinion from a very senior practicing neonatologist he and I both knew, and he agreed that she would give a fair and balanced opinion. So that's Dr. Sviliena Dimitrova, isn't it? I think it is. I assume it is. Not only because it's a she, but because of what she says. But I think that's who it is. Because there's such a lack of names here. It's just this person, that consultant. It's hard to pin this down. Maybe there's reasons why he's done it, but I'm basing it on the Channel 5 documentary. I'm linking it with that, and thinking that this very senior practicing neonatologist is Dr. Sviliena Dimitrova. The last little section here, the penultimate section, is called Senior Neonatal Opinion. I have only seen the prosecution, and this is in quotes now, this is this neonatalist, and this is what she says. I have only seen the prosecution's summarising opening statement. I've not been privy to the details of the evidence, but what I've read troubles me deeply. The cases all have much more plausible alternative explanations than those alleged. I think this is Dr. Dimitrova, because she talked in Channel 5 about it being completely implausible, what Evans was saying. She goes on to say, if it is Dimitrova, it's not explicit in the Private Eye article. She goes on to say, yet the defence appears not to have made many of these obvious points. Many of the prosecution's comments are medically illiterate. That's sharp, isn't it? Many of the prosecution's comments are medically illiterate. And so too many of the expert witness comments, medically illiterate. Why weren't these challenged? Why didn't the defence have better medical advice? Or, as Professor Mike Hall is experienced and credible, why didn't they use the advice they were given to better effect? On the basis of what I've seen, this conviction is wholly unsafe. It totally shakes my faith in the competence of the law, close quote. I believe that's Dr. Dimitrova saying that. Either way, it's an very experienced working neonatologist that both Breary knew and apparently Philip Hammond knew. I don't know whether to read this closing section here. Oh yeah, I will actually, because there's some interesting bits here. That closing remarks of the private eye article. None of the above proves guilt or innocence. Well, first of all, you don't have to prove innocence, but maybe I'm just being too picky here, but none of the above proves guilt or innocence. Not sure what that sentence is doing there. Merely that if a jury only hears experts from one side, it only gets one side of the science. It's all a bit sort of vague language for me, but the science, that's a quite an unfortunate phrase in relation to recent years, isn't it? The science. Other things that keep MD awake at night are, I know I'm being a bit picky, but I think he's doing a great job, Philip Hammond, with these two articles. It's out there and lots of people are seeing it, and he's obviously very concerned, but trying to place it at a certain level. He's obviously not going to say things like I'm saying here, because he's got a completely different kind of audience, and he's got a professional standing. So he's got these bullet points here about things that keep him awake. The first one is, different authorities give different figures for the total death count for the period under investigation. Well, what is the period under investigation? It's this arbitrary period of June to June 2015 to 2016. Why is that arbitrary period even chosen? Why should it have been chosen? If you're concerned about a spike in deaths across 2 years, why are you choosing June till June? Why would you do that? You know, there are several deaths that happened before June 2015, and there is a death that happens after June 2016. It goes on to say here, so there's these different figures ranging from 13 to 17. Well, that's because he's not being specific about what this period under investigation is in this article, because it's apparently 17 for the full 2 years, apparently. I'm maintaining that it could be 19 or more. I'm doing that on the basis that the freedom of information request, I've done videos about this previously, but if you haven't seen them, then I'm just saying it again now. 2 deaths in August and October 2015 that ended up on the indictment as murder charges aren't shown as deaths of early neonatal babies on the freedom of information request for those 2 months. 0 deaths are showing. 0 deaths. But there are stillbirths showing for those 2 months. So what's going on there? If those 2 deaths have been miscoded deliberately or accidentally or for some strange reason or whatever the reason is, I'm trying to find that out at the moment with a subsequent freedom of information request. I'm waiting for the results of that. If they are wrongly in that stillbirths column, then that puts up that figure to at least 19 deaths across the full 2 years of 2015 and 2016. Nobody I can see is talking about that at the moment in all these articles. Nobody's mentioning that. I'm trying to get further confirmation, as I said, via a further supplementary freedom of information request from the hospital. They haven't got back to me yet. They seem to be taking quite a bit of time. It's quite not a very complicated question what I've asked them. I think it's maybe giving them some pause about how they're going to answer it, because it's something quite odd, you see. It's quite odd to have freedom of information requests showing no deaths in months in which there are alleged murders happening, isn't there? Do you know what I mean? So back to Philip Hammond here, he's saying, 13 to 17. Well, it's not about authorities giving them. He's wrong to say it's about authorities giving them. It's about he's sort of factually incorrect it's about different authorities. In respect of that figure 13 to 17, it's about what is the time frame. Is it the full 2 years, or is it this arbitrary time frame of June till June? So he goes on to say, Dr. Philip Hammond, I don't think he's grasped that. So he's kind of saying, oh, it's different authorities are saying, some saying there's 17 deaths in the same period. No, they're not. No, they're not. There are 17 deaths across the full 2015, 2016. So we're told. But I think there could be at least 19, possibly more, because if they've miscoded 2 deaths as stillbirths, who's to say they haven't done that with more deaths across those 2 full years? There could be 20, there could be 21 deaths in total. We don't know. So I share that idea with him, but he's kind of misapprehended about what this 13 vis-a-vis 17 figure is and what that represents. He goes on to say, if they can't even get the body count right, body count's a bit of an arch phrase to use here, isn't it? Can't even get the body count right, what else have they got wrong? Well, indeed, they've got a lot of things wrong, and everyone that's on the side of prosecuting and demonising and scapegoating Lucy Letby has got everything wrong, literally everything, in terms of what they've done to this innocent person. Everything wrong. That's what they've got wrong. He goes on to say, Lucy Letby has not been implicated in the 6 to 10 deaths in that period. He says he's not being specific about what the period is again, you see. When the unit average was 2 to 3, see, again, his lack of specificity here, because the unit average being 2 to 3, well, he's talking about a yearly average, a full calendar yearly average here of 2 to 3. And in fact, it was 3 and 4 in the previous 2 years, i.e. 2014 and 2013. So there's kind of a bit of a few errors here, really, which is really need clarity on to make these statements, really, especially if you're putting it across to a wide audience. It's just about research, and just need to look and see that you've got a figure of 4 in 2014 and 3 in 2013. So it's kind of a bit broad brushstroke there, and the actual figures, what you could actually be talking about here is Lucy Letby was not implicated, or has not been implicated, in six of the 13 across this arbitrary period, June till June, but potentially at least 12, between 6 and 12, not 6 and 10, 6 and 12 across the full 2 years. Not implicated in 12. That goes back to the previous video I did in which I'm saying it's getting on for 2/3 that she's not implicated in. Getting on for 2/3. And if there are more miscoded deaths, or deaths miscoded as stillbirths, then it could end up being a full 2/3 that Lucy Letby was never implicated in. And we only have to look at January 2016, which is, in terms of a month, it's one of the highest spikes across this period, and Lucy Letby wasn't implicated in any of those deaths in 2016. And as I said in a number of videos back, the most intense period of deaths in terms of numbers across the 2 full years is a period between, just from memory now, I think it's from October to either March or April, October 2015 to March or April 2016. And none of those, I think 7 or 8 deaths, none of those 7 or 8 deaths Lucy Letby is implicated in. I think it could be 7. So his figures are wrong here, unfortunately. His figures are wrong. Anyway, that's just how it is, isn't it? That's the most intense period, yeah. I'm just going to think back. I should have the documents open in front of me. There's a period of deaths across 2015 and 2016. So Lucy Letby, in terms of what she was implicated in, you've got this, she is charged and convicted wrongly with killing 3 babies in June 2015, wasn't she? And then there's 2 in 2016. They're the sort of spikes, as it were, in the alleged murders or the murder convictions. They're the spikes. But the other major spike across that time is right in the middle, and that's in January 2016. 3 deaths in 1 month. None of them ever been implicated, in which Lucy was never implicated in any of them. So he's saying here, and I understand the point, the general point he's making is, but his figures are out, and he's not being specific as to which time frame he's looking at. He's conflating, in the private eye here, Philip Hammond is conflating the arbitrary slice of time between June 2015, June 2016 to the 2 full years. So the 2 full years per FOI report is 17, but I think it's going to be more than 17, hence what I was saying about those 2 that didn't show where they should show. I think it's 19 minimum. But he's making the main point he's making is what's caused that excess anyway. There's an excess anyway, but what's caused that? If the figure is 19 across those 2 years, 2015, 2016, then we're getting, then if you take out, let's say you take out the 7 murder convictions, then that leaves you with 12, doesn't it? That leaves you with 12. Well, if you use my figure of 19, because I think 2 have been miscoded as stillbirths, you've got 19 then. You take out the 7 murder charge, you've got 12 left. That leaves an average of 6 per year, which is a big increase from the 4 and 3 from the 2 years previous, i.e. 2013, 2014. Hope I haven't confused anyone with all these numbers and figures, but if you watch some of the other videos, hopefully it will be a lot clearer. The main point I wanted to make there is that he's not being explicit about, he seems to be confused about the figures, but it's actually due to this arbitrary slice of time that's being used rather than different authorities. I won't keep repeating myself. Sorry. I'm sorry, but the next bullet point he says here, the pathological evidence doesn't prove guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Well, it doesn't prove anything. It doesn't prove anything at all. Nothing's been proved. And the spread, I'm not taking him to task. But I want to be clear that when I see issues that I don't want to let anything go, because I don't want this kind of fuzziness to be out there, really. But anyway, but it's great for him for doing it, per se. Good on him. The next bullet point, the pathological evidence doesn't prove guilty beyond reasonable doubt. No, certainly doesn't. And the spreadsheet merely proves Lucy was on duty when Lucy was on duty, indeed. Although it was paraded in court with a certainty that would fail an undergraduate statistics viva, yeah, absolutely, it's a piece of crap. It's tendentious and ridiculous to the highest degree. It's an utter fraud, piece of fraud that they enacted. There must be proper statistical expertise underpinning all such trials. I think you can possibly get bogged down in this statistical expertise. Just bring in all the deaths. Well, and then from that, I suppose, then you've got a different set of statistics. But it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. The major problem is here, you've got an individual. First, you've got the Breary and Jayaram and whoever else in that unit cherry-picking a certain lot of deaths to decide which ones are suspicious, then colluding with the police and Evans to all get on the same page, to very conveniently deem all the ones where she's not on duty or they can't pin it on Lucy Letby as expected and explainable. But the problem with all that is this is why it's so important. The expected and the explainable is that they're not being taken to task about on what basis they found those cases expected and explainable. That's all in shadow, as I keep describing it as. It's all in shadow, and it's just as important in order to analyse the fraud of what they've done, in order to analyse how they've constructed this con and this framing and this stitch-up, is to have sight of Evans's, not the ones he chose, not just the ones he chose, but the ones he excluded and why he did that and what his rationales were for that. That has to all be challenged as well and taken apart. Not that he adds them in, But to say, well, here's an example of something that you said was explainable, but in a later case you're saying it's unexplainable, just because Lucy Letby's on duty, and you in conjunction with the NHS stroke consultants and the police can make it fit for you. But here you've eschewed it and pushed it away and say, oh no, that's explainable. But they're not being taken to task. It's not being drilled into. It's not being put under a microscope, which is what it should be. Every decision that Evans made, I believe, in utter collusion with these consultants and the police. The police is a kind of bridging. It's a triangulation scenario here, but these three colluding elements, every decision that was made has to be put under the microscope, not just the ones that they choose to get onto an indictment. All the ones that they choose not to get on the indictment is just as important to analyse. Will they be able to do that? Will anyone be able to do that in terms of a defence of Lucy Letby? Sorry, this has gone a lot longer. They always do, a lot longer than I thought. So he's not. The final bullet point he says here: the Chester consultant confidently asserted to me. I think this is Breary. See, he's doubling down. I'm pretty sure this is Breary he's talking about, unless it's Jayaram, but I think it's Breary. There are many more unusual deaths and near misses from that period, with a temporal association with her. Open brackets, Letby, Lucy Letby. Which period? The June to June period, or the full 2 years? It's just, these people are despicable. The Crown Prosecution Service, this is the continuation of the quote of this consultant, this bastard. The Crown Prosecution Service went for the ones that they felt had the strongest proof of guilt for the first wave of charges. We're talking about 8 years ago now, when they started building it up, or 7 years ago at least, when they started that investigation. 2017, isn't it? And soon it's going to be coming on to the full 8 years. They've done nothing about the other ones, but he goes on to say here, this consultant, so they did it for the first wave of charges. There will be more to come. Oh, will there? Will there be more to come? What that is, close quote. I just said will there, and that's exactly what MD Philip Hammond says. Will there? Where are they? How does he know? Should he know? Exactly. Should he know as a witness? Should he know? Isn't that a bit of a red flag to saying that he's been orchestrating it all along? That he orchestrated the ones that Evan chose? That they were in collusion? Isn't that a bit of a red flag there? And Philip Hammond really well picked that up with the should he know? Should he know? Exactly. Yeah, why should he know that? How would he know? How would he know and should he know? How would he know? What role is he playing in this? What role in conjunction with this sociopath Evans? Just finish off the last bit. He said, so this is MD saying, how does he know? Should he know? Hopefully the public inquiry will get to the truth. I doubt that very much. But, and this is the more likely thing, I hope, or perhaps David Davis MP will, as he plans to table a series of parliamentary questions on the Lucy Letby trial in September. That's the thing I'm hoping, got more hopes for than the public inquiry, the Thirlwall inquiry. So I'll put a link below about that there. And I just want to, before I end the video, I just want to go back to where I started, where MD Philip Hammond starts with the quote from the neonatal lead, which I believe is Breary that he's talking about. I think that he's the main interlocutor that he's having here, that he's not naming, but I think that's who it is. Because this is the one that's really wants more and more and more, because they know they've done wrong here. They know they've done wrong. I don't believe like Philip Hammond seems to want to believe, or allows himself to believe, or perhaps does believe that this person truly believes in Lucy Letby's guilt. The other person needs to believe in Lucy Letby's guilt because of what they've done. She's been punished, so they're going to punish her more. People are challenging it now, so the only way is forward for them. It's the last thing they're going to do is say, "Oh Christ, we've done it all wrong. I've got doubts. sorry, I know she's been in prison now for 4 or 5 years, and there's been, all the parents have been told all these things which are incorrect, and there's been this massive investigation for about 20 million plus. I've got doubts now myself. I think maybe we were wrong. Maybe they're never going to do that. Their arrogance and their narcissism and their wickedness will not allow them to ever do that. So the only way for them is forward. Same with Evans, same with the police. They know it's curtains for them if they even express any doubt whatsoever. So they've got to do the opposite, which is to double down, add another nail into the coffin, keep trying to do that. Because they're in a kind of survival mode now, because they know what's coming for them. When the actual truth comes out, and piecemeal it will, and it is, as everything that they submitted for the trial, for the prosecution, is being worked over minutely and smashed to pieces in the court of public opinion by professionals all over the world now, with documentaries in the offing from other countries as well, and other articles due from The Guardian, and the Royal Society of Statistical Society going to have a meeting in September as well, and give a report of some sort in September. And as MD mentions here, the David Davis probe, as it was called, or which is going to attract a lot of people to analyse everything that's been said here. As I believe it is Dr. Dimitrova is saying, that the conviction's wholly unsafe. It totally shakes my faith in the competence of the law. And what does she say here? That the medically illiterate, the medical illiteracy of the experts in that, so-called experts in that trial, I'll call them hired guns, the medical illiteracy of them and the whole prosecution case is being exposed. Not in a second trial yet, been exposed across the world, and will continue to be. The bit I've gone off beam there. The bit that I wanted to go back to very specifically here is where MD is quoting the neonatal lead, Breary, I believe, where he's saying in here, the neonatal lead, and he's talking about the RCPCH. Sorry, it's the RCPCH reports quotes, which I read at length a while ago in this video, where it said the draft report said that the neonatal lead, so this is a quote from the RCPCH report, that the neonatal lead, I believe Breary, had identified, I'm certain it's Breary, had identified that one nurse had been rostered on shift for all the deaths, and that was that 3 words I pointed out before, all the deaths. Well, what do you mean by all the deaths? I'm asking the RCPCH report now, because if this is a draft report, the RCPCH saying all the deaths, well, all of them? All 17 or all 19 or 13? Why are there only 7 on the indictment then? Why are they saying all the deaths? They're not even specifying a time period. You can see how wishy-washy all this stuff is, and how they conflate the deaths. So it's saying that, is it saying here that the neonatal lead was blaming Lucy for all the deaths across those full 2 years, whether she was there or not? Is that what it's saying? We don't know what it really means. It's so vague and so generalised. What are all the deaths? All the deaths that Breary deems as suspicious, that end up on the indictment, and that just so happened Evans copies exactly. Is that right? Which again is the further red flag, which goes right, it zooms right back to the end of this article, when Dr. Phil Hammond says, should he know, how does he know? With regard to a presumed second wave of charges. How does he know, and should he know? How does, at the point the RCPCH report is done, now they're there in September 2016, and you've got Breary saying that Lucy Letby is implicated in all the deaths at that point, before Evans has even looked into it. So you can see now that those consultants, particularly Breary and then Jayaram coming a very close second, had determined already which deaths were going to end up on that indictment before Evans went through this fake, fraudulent rigmarole of writing a bunch of reports about them, because they'd conferred and they'd got on the same page. We know that. We've got to know that, because he didn't make any mistakes, did he? Evans didn't, or did he? Did he make some mistakes? Yeah, he did, actually. He did make some mistakes when he was sent the second batch of 28 sets of notes and found 25 suspicious cases, and the police did nothing with them. The police did nothing with them. As I said in a previous video, when Evans says something is suspicious and the police can make it work for the indictment, then it ends up on the indictment. When he says something is suspicious 25 times and they can't make it work against her, then they all get dropped. Does that tell you something about his reliability? Does it also tell you about something about the collusion between the police, the NHS, those consultants, and Evans? That they're all working together, all got full sight and full knowledge of what everyone's doing, what everyone's thinking. Evans knows 100% what Breary apparently suspected, or is alleged to have suspected, with regard to, quote, all the deaths that the RCPCH report understood from Breary, that Breary suspected Lucy Letby of all the deaths. What are all the deaths? We don't know what that is. That's why I've got to believe that Evans had knowledge about this before he even got involved, before he even formally got involved via the NCA in May 2017, before his email which said, this sounds like my kind of case. It sounded like his kind of case because he already knew a lot about it. He already knew a lot about it, I believe, primarily through Breary and or Jayaram. We've got to prove that. That's the early part of the collusion, to get him in there as the safe pair of hands, to apparently have this external person coming in who's innocent, who doesn't know Lucy Letby's name. I never knew her name. He's seeing it in thousands of bits of paper, and he's choosing all those cases where her name's all over those bits of paper as the salient cases where she's on duty all the time. And he's excluding all the ones where she's not on duty, I think. We don't know that. We need to know that. We need to know about the ones that he's excluded and why he's done that. As I said throughout this video, they need to be drilled in absolutely minutely. Will the NHS and their lawyers and their defensive position, will they stop anybody doing that? They probably will try and stop somebody doing that, even the defence team. But that's what's needed for fairness. But nobody in any of these organisations, the NHS, the criminal justice system as a whole, the police, they don't want the truth to come out. They're terrified of the truth coming out about what's happened here now. They're livid about people, angry, livid about people asking questions about this. They're angry because they're frightened about what's going to happen when this miscarriage of justice is overturned, and what it means for them all. Because it spells doom for all of them, professionally at the very least. I think they should face charges. If we knew explicitly what they'd done, and I'm inferring what they've done because I can see the shape of the con and the fraud that they've done here by means of what they've excluded and what they've kept in. And the more you find out about it, the more evidence of that there is, the more smoking guns there are for that. These are the real smoking guns of the corruption that's been involved here. And you get a little taste that Philip Hammond feels that as well, gets that sense as well, where he asks the very short, punchy questions at the end of this article, where he says, where this person he's talking to, the consultant, which has got to be Breary, and Philip Hammond says, the consultant says there'll be more to come. Philip Hammond says, will there? Where are they? In other words, after 7 years, will there? Where are they? How does he know? Should he know? Should he know? No, he shouldn't know. No, he shouldn't know. He's meant to be being treated as a witness at the very most. But they never were. They were treated as co-investigators from day one. And all in some cosy, incestuous group. Evans, this ghastly bunch of hideous, narcissistic consultants, and the police in some nasty, vicious, collusive, corrupt, vortex of injustice that has ended up with this sick, evil miscarriage of justice, which is going to be overturned, and the truth is coming for all these bastards that have made that happen, and freedom is coming for Lucy Letby, so she can go back to her family and begin her life again, and that the parents know the truth about what happened to their babies in that unit, and they can be relieved of the burden of the false burden. Bad enough that they've lost their children, but the false burden that has been placed upon them by the corrupt police, the corrupt judiciary, the corrupt justice system, and these corrupt so-called experts, these frauds and these bastard consultants have conspired to lie to them, to tell them that their children were murdered, where what happened was that they were the victims of medical negligence and an absolutely failing system and a failed level 2 unit that should not have been taking babies at that level of acuity, wasn't fit for purpose, and they blamed an innocent person to get out of it. Thank you for listening. Cheers. Thank you. Goodbye.